Billie Eilish.
What?
Her music?
Who's what?
Billie Eilish.
I don't know what you're saying.
I don't understand it.
I'm saying I don't know what words are coming out of your mouth.
Billie
Billy, as in William.
Billy?
Eilish.
Hello? Is anybody here? I'm going to take a shower. Okay.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to From the Middle. My name is Kendall Alala.
I'm Corey Hubble.
And Dylan Hubble.
We are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America with a point of view that is somewhere in the middle. This is, like I said, the fourth episode of our little podcast here. We are 3 episodes deep into this thing. We're figuring it out. You're figuring us out. We hope that you've liked what you've heard so far. Feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe to all of these that you hear. Those are the only way that we can grow this thing. We appreciate every bit of that. If you have suggestions, if you have questions for us, if you have things that you would like us to talk about, feel free to do that to our social media at From the Mid Pod, everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find links there to leave us voice messages that we can play in future episodes and react that way. We want to get to know you guys as well. So let us know who is listening.
Yeah,
Yes.
we want to keep it. We want to keep it interactive. We want to keep it fun, two-way. And so the more that you guys, I think, help us with topics or questions or conversation starters, I think that would all be really, really fun. So we have set up the capability for you to leave us voicemails so you can do that. Or if you just want to email us directly, you can email us at fromthemiddle@protonmail. That's PROTON mail.com.
Yes, propel us to social media fame and help us become titans of the podcasting industry.
I want to be a social media influencer.
I don't. That's ridiculous that's a job, by the way.
So dumb.
I can't believe there's 2 jobs that I'm blown away by. Social media influencer just blows my mind. And anyone that is insert tech company evangelist is just...
Whoa, what?
Yeah, it's basically a corporate cheerleading job. Is anything insert tech company evangelist. It's just odd that that's moved from a religious word to a corporate job title.
Getting the word out about whatever startup app.
Yeah. You're just
Which used to just be called sales.
Yeah, exactly. You're just pitching companies on your thing, and that role is called an evangelist.
I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
I've just never heard the term.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
The social media influencer thing is a funny one to the degree that I heard about people who can rent time in the section of a fuselage of a private jet to make it appear as though they're traveling the world. So you rent time in a grounded section of fuselage. You do yourself up in fancy clothes and you just take selfies of yourself to make it appear as though you're traveling the world. This is a real thing that's happening.
I'm not sure what the combination of words you just said means, but I'm blown away somebody's getting paid for that. So
No, they're just doing it to make it appear like they're that fancy or powerful.
That's awesome.
Or crazy.
yeah, I am joking, of course. We are absolutely here. This is not about social media stardom. We are absolutely here to just have some fun and hopefully interact with you guys. And we throw all that stuff out hoping that we'll just get some more interaction because it's a lot of fun hearing what people think and what they like and don't like. And, we kind of have a clear path. That's not going to be any kind of heavy influences to what we're doing because, like I said, we're here to have fun first and foremost. But we certainly want to hear what you think, and that might influence a little bit of what we do later. So, speaking of social media influence and fake traveling, what kind of actual traveling do you think you'd want to do as a human? I've been thinking a lot about that lately, mostly because I haven't been on vacation in a very long time. Like,
That's too bad.
An actual vacation. I mean, I've taken time off. I had some parent leave, and that was kind of like a staycation. And, you know, we've done like little stuff, a reunion or whatever, but actual vacation, probably our honeymoon. We went to Charleston, South Carolina, and I love to travel. I mentioned that in one of the first couple episodes, but I rarely do it. So I've been thinking more about that, and it's kind of this greater discussion around like bucket list stuff, right? So like
good one.
Things that we want to do that we're looking forward to, and why do we want to do that, and places that we want to go, and hopefully these aren't just like things that we always say we want to do. You know, this isn't like Up. You know, where Carl never really got to go until like the very end. Yeah, I didn't mean to drag it down.
just turned sad.
If you haven't seen the Pixar movie Up, you just really need to watch the first 10 minutes, and that's all you need to see, and you're going to love it. But
So what about for you then? So history guy. So there's got to be some places that bucket list places you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if I'm not limited, I think part of this discussion is a little more fun if we assume that we're not limited in any way. Like, I'm not talking obscene expenditure, but you know, if you could just kind of schedule something and go do something reasonable and have fun doing it, what would that look like? I certainly would love to check out various places throughout Europe. Would absolutely be the top of my list. I mean, there's tons of stuff in America I want to check out too. But I think some of those are a little more accessible. Some of the stuff in Europe that I would love to go see, you know, we've got quite a bit of Irish and kind of German background to our families, and there's lots of places there that I would go see. There's a great channel on YouTube. It's very much in the vein of like the PBS stuff, like over the world or over this or over that. It's, I think, the World HD or something like that. But there's, I've watched some of those around Europe where they're showing some of these castles in southern Germany and then down into Italy, and especially Ireland and the UK and Scotland are some places that I would love to go see. Anything with any type of significant historical value to me is always exciting. That's probably not at the top of the list for a lot of people, but castles and ruins and museums to me are so much fun. I basically travel for historical sightseeing, and food are some of the main things that I like to do.
Fun fact, when we were living at home, I painted your room, the inside of your room, to look like the interior of a castle. So we did the big blocks and like the dripping like stains from the rock, and that goes back to the chivalry thing. Like if you could go back in time and live, I'm pretty sure you'd go back. I mean, there are some downsides to going back to medieval times.
Just a couple. We could discuss at length why the Dark Ages shouldn't be called the Dark Ages, but that moniker still remains. So yeah, maybe you wouldn't want to jump back there, but the bird's eye view of that world would be fun to kind of fly over and see what was happening. But that, to me, there's lots of places that I would enjoy traveling, but I think there's a good mix, right? Like, you know, I think of, in a modern sense of those places, like my brain just kind of quickly jumped to the movie, The Holiday.
Yeah.
And one of the main characters has this like really quaint English cottage outside of, presumably not far from London. It seems like that's where she works in the movie. And you've got this really quaint cottage. And so there's a part of me that I've always said, if I could have like, just pick a second home somewhere, that this would be like, it'd be in some outside of some suburb of London or Dublin or a place like that, in a cool cottage, a little bit, not too far from the city. You have access to food and museums and places like that. But, you know, also get to be out a little bit.
Yeah.
So, any of that would be, travel wise, would be on my bucket list for sure. As many museums and things as I could go see, absolutely, I'm into it.
Are there experiential bucket list things? So not just a place, but a thing you would like to do at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit. I've talked about being into sports. So huge college football guy. I enjoy the NFL, pretty much any sport live, but I like watching, I love watching college football. I enjoy watching college basketball, NFL. I'm really sad to see the AAF go. If you don't know, that was the Alliance of American Football. Didn't even quite make a full season, but I thought it was a kind of a fun, speedier version of the NFL that was really nicely packaged. And unfortunately, it didn't get a finish their first.
You were the only one who was looking forward to it that much,
Look,
unfortunately.
I was one subscriber of none other. You know, I have seen some funny photos of like whole pallets full of merchandise for these teams that are just sitting now. And there were people buying up. Topps was actually, I think, making like football cards for AAF that people were kind of buying them up to see if they'd be of value later.
I think maybe now they will be.
Yeah, they might be. I don't know. I was enjoying. I didn't have a team picked out yet. I didn't even have enough time. There was like 8 or 10 teams, and
So we got to slow down to speed up. Give us the Spark Notes version for the person who has no idea what we're talking about.
I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's now defunct. You can't go watch it except maybe on YouTube. But basically, there's been many attempts to make other levels of professional football, and most of the experts agree there's probably only room for NFL and maybe one other professional football league in the United States.
Although others have tried.
Maybe, although many have tried and have failed.
Arena's probably been the closest.
Yeah, and there's the Canadian Football League, which people get to watch. In North America, you get to check out. But long story short, this was the Alliance of American Football was built for by players and fans and management in the NFL. It was teed up nicely to where it was also going to be on CBS and the NFL Network, so it seemed more like a complementary partnership than an adversarial one. Mm-hmm. They'd even timed some things so camps would work out in the draft, and both leagues can benefit. And it really seemed like it would almost be like a minor league-ish farm system for the NFL. But that's it. So there was some cool things. The coaches were mic'd up, the refs were mic'd up, some players were mic'd up, so you could hear what a lot of people were talking about. The commercial breaks, and I use that sort of in air quotes, the commercial breaks, you had a side-by-side of an ad running next to the camera on the field still running. So there was technically a commercial, but there was never really commercials.
Right.
If you wanted to keep your eyes on the field.
They're doing that now, aren't they? With college football and
Yeah, they're doing that some. I know they do that for like racing. So
Okay.
if you watch to the Indy 500, that's what they did.
Yeah. So, long story short, I was enjoying that. It basically they didn't have the money to continue on. They canceled before the playoffs in season 1, and it's disappointing. And it looks like things are going to shift. Any remnants of that will shift to the XFL, which is trying to make a comeback. And
This is the XFL.
yeah, a little too aggressive for my football taste. So we'll see what Vince McMahon can pull together.
Didn't you say, Kendall, the other day that like players were left injured?
Yeah. So when the league stopped, man, nobody knew it was coming, and it happened like now.
It literally,
and it's like everything is done. So you have guys like stuck in hotels without a return flight. Guys who are injured are now like on their own for figuring that out.
Sorry about that.
And yeah,
it was rough. So I hopefully
that didn't sound very.
I know if you heard from episode 3, I sometimes can sound a little terse in my delivery. That's
that was
intentional.
rough.
Yeah, that was rough. So anyway,
Sucks to be them.
I want to talk about me again.
Yeah, sorry. Go back to your bucket list. So that was all of a build up to say,
which I wasn't going to go that deep, but I appreciate it. We got to talk about the AF a little bit. So I am an Ohio State fan for football and basketball, and a Minnesota Vikings NFL fan. Yeah, that's Kendall, who happens to like some other team.
On both of those counts, by the way.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, you'll get over it. Anyways, so for me,
see you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll come full circle on those comments, I'm sure. No, I think for me, I'd love to see a game in every Big Ten football stadium. So that to me would be a blast, and it's even more fun that they've added some East Coast schools. So eventually, over the course of my life, I would love to do that. I've been to games at the Shoe at Ohio Stadium. And I'd love to eventually hit all the other Big Ten stadiums.
Yeah.
So that's something I would love to do. There's 14 schools now, something like that. So it'd take a little bit.
So the big house, like your pinnacle. Like I want to go to like the actual football arena.
oh, that was so loaded.
Yeah.
That's it. Make that the last one. You can build up to that.
I mean, I could certainly come full circle back to the big house. I don't. Maybe I end near that one. I don't know. For anyone who doesn't know, he's asking about Ohio State's rivals, Michigan Stadium. So how do I feel about going to the big house? I feel like...
I mean, it doesn't look like a giant toilet bowl. So
yeah, sure.
geez.
Yeah. So maybe, At least the stadium's full where we are. So if
You want to talk about attendance?
yeah, that's fine.
Oh,
This isn't going to be a sports podcast, I promise. But no, I think that would be a lot of fun. Even as a Michigan fan, you have to admit that'd be fun to hit up every stadium
no. It
in the
would be.
Big Ten. So yeah,
I'm playing a role is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
I don't care as much as I lead on.
yeah.
we need the sound effect of a record going off of the thing because a bunch of our listeners just went, wait, Kendall's a Michigan fan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the kind of help you can find these days. So,
Hey, but if we can't come together in spite of our differences and have a conversation, remember what this podcast is about, you guys. If people knew some of the things that were hanging on the walls of this very studio, they would question our sanity. We're not going to. We're not
and
going
our
to talk
credibility.
and our credibility
for that matter.
Sorry, Dad. I'll be good.
Anyways, so that's cool. All the stadiums.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I think that would be a lot of fun. I've actually been to a game at Northwestern. It actually wasn't an Ohio State game. I was in Chicago visiting a friend, and Ohio State was playing Penn State at Penn State later in the day at 8 p.m. But the Northwestern game was at noon, and they were playing Iowa. And so we're like, let's just get some tickets and go. Cool. So it was a lot of fun. We walked into the Northwestern Iowa game in our Buckeye gear. Hats and shirts and all that stuff. And as we're walking into the stadium, it's not like any of them can throw shade at Ohio State when you're Iowa and Northwestern. So you just sort of have to like, what are you guys doing here? We're like, we just like football. So we sat in the middle of some Northwestern and Iowa fans, and it was a lot of fun. And, they wished our team good luck later in the day. And had a blast at, I think it's Evan Field. At Northwestern. So
Cool.
Yeah, great atmosphere. And I think that was really, having gone to games at the Shoe and gone to the Northwestern game, it was just kind of sparked that. Like, it was great to see a different school's game day atmosphere and just get to participate as kind of that third party for Northwestern Iowa. So that would be something I would love doing. All those schools really, from Wisconsin and Nebraska in the West over to the far East Coast, you've got Rutgers and Maryland and Penn State as kind of your more Eastern schools, and everywhere in between. So it's, you're covering between New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania over to Nebraska and Wisconsin, Minnesota. You're covering a big area. And through that process, I would be the type that would want to look up some of these, like, what are the college campus food stops along the way? What are the Columbus's Therminators? What are those type of experiences along the way? The Ohio Deli, the Therminator. What are some of those things that you can go check out while you're on some of these other campuses? So that would be a huge fun part of that to me.
Heck yeah.
But I think the last one feels a little more, maybe not humble, but it's simpler in a way. I just want not huge relative to an actual theater. I just want a dedicated home theater in my house, like a whole family can pile in to watch a game or a movie, and surround sound and video games and crazy chaos with some kind of this kind of muffled, muted walls that doesn't bother anybody, and can just crank it and go in there and have a blast when I want to get away a little bit. So if there's one more simple one, it doesn't have to be one of the home theaters that have like crazy seating and lighting and, stars in the ceiling with crown molding and paneling. And it doesn't have to be that, but just give me a room. My wife and I keep discussing a house in the future. Like, just make sure there's one room in the house that I can do that. I don't care if it's a bedroom or a basement or a loft. I don't care. I just, the rest of the house, do whatever you want. Just make sure there's one room that I can do that.
I love it.
So I'm a simple man who wants to travel the world and get to do whatever I want. So let me eat across the world and enjoy anything that my heart desires.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So since Kendall likes Michigan, let's skip him. And
No.
now go ahead, dude.
Oh, man. All right. Bucket list. We were starting off with travel, and I've got to say, like, I like traveling. It's fun. I enjoy vacations. About once a year or so, my wife and I try to find an opportunity to sort of get away, the two of us. And I enjoy that, but I I have a hard time pinpointing sort of like one place or a list of places that I like need to go. Like I don't have the burning desire to like to be an international traveler. I mean, I think it'd be fun, but I mean, it's, you know, I don't want to, that's not what I would spend my money on. Like I would rather take the same cash and like go on a cruise. Like that'd be fun for me. And again, like my wife and I, the two of us on a cruise, like that's the kind of travel that I'd be all about doing. And so I guess I would consider that on my list is taking a cruise with my wife.
Now, I had an old boss who really sold me on the idea of cruises. So I'm curious now, would this be with or without kids? No right or wrong answer. With or without kids? If it's with kids, are you thinking like Disney cruise, like a huge kind of interactive thing, seeing any certain parts of the world? Like, do you want to tour the British Isles, Antarctica, the Caribbean?
Well, it'd be right now in my mind's eye. My kids are young enough that like I can't really envision taking such a vacation with them at this point. So like right now when I picture it, it's just my wife and I, and it's not a huge interactive cruise. I mean, there'd be a bar and fancy dining and that kind of thing, and just the two of us relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be cool. And part of what's attractive to me of that is closing yourself off to like you're literally leaving shore on a boat, and there's nowhere else to go, and so you might as well just like sit and relax and talk to the person you're with, and connect. There's no distractions, and I mean, that just sounds really good and relaxing to me.
Yeah.
And that's why I say too that like when we travel, it doesn't matter much to me like where we go. We tend to go just so my wife travels often during the summer for different conferences and things for work, and what we've done before in the past is we kind of jump on one of those. And so there's a conference, and if there's a conference in San Francisco, that was one that we did where she would go to that conference, and then I would show up like with a few days left of that conference and just kind of hang out by myself for a few days.
Yeah.
And then the conference is over and she schedules her flight through her work so that she gets to stay an extra week. And then all we're paying for is like that 1 week of the hotel stay and my plane ticket. But other than that, like her ride there was paid for.
Yep.
And the time that we spent there was paid for the room as long as the conference was going on. And that kind of thing. So we kind of have been able to save some money that way, doing those kinds of trips. And honestly, like San Francisco was one of those. San Diego was one of those. Washington, D.C. was one. But it doesn't matter much to me where it is. Like, I'm the kind of guy that wants to be in a nice hotel with amenities because, like, it appeals to me to stay there.
Yeah. You're speaking my language. Did you guys do so what did you do on some of those trips? Did you sightsee? Was it food? Was it, what like?
Yeah. So food is, I'm a large man.
I don't think you had to preface. I don't think anyone cares, but okay.
It makes sense that I would like food. No, I like experiencing food. Like that's a big part of it for me, for sure. So yeah, so wherever we are, that's sort of one thing that I always kind of look forward to and do some research and find out. And I often like to try to find a local dive for breakfast.
Yeah, man.
Like the local diner kind of breakfast kind of thing. And then if we can get like a fancy dinner, just one during our stay there, and pick a local place, and that's cool. And then other than that, I mean, it's kind of walking around. Yeah, and honestly, I'm perfectly okay with eating in the hotel, and so that's part of that. Like, I want a hotel that has food and has decent food and that kind of thing. We also, a little thing for my wife and I is when we go on such trips, we like to find tattoo parlors, and we try to walk into a tattoo place and get just small tattoos of some kind. So that's another thing that we like to do.
Interesting.
On our little vacations.
It's fun.
I would have had no idea. Mm-hmm. Today I learned. Yeah. All right, Corey, you're up next.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in that with my job, I get to travel both domestically and internationally. My travel is about 25% of the time, so about 1 week a month, I'm getting to travel somewhere, places that I never thought I'd get to go, being a kid from a small farm town in Northwest Ohio. So that's very cool. And even though I'm typically very focused on our meetings and it's a lot of truly is business travel, I typically don't get much time to see the sites, but I do sort of get to tick off a few of the things. I get to see it. I get to try some of the local food and experience some of the local culture. So I'm fortunate in that I get to do some of that and have traveled to some pretty fun places. But bucket list stuff, I really want to cage dive with great white sharks.
Oh man, I should have said that.
Nopers.
The reason that we have cable television in our home is because of Shark Week. Like for real. Like we would probably just have a streaming services, and if it weren't, I'm obsessed with sharks. I find their design, just fascinating, and to see them in nature would be awesome. Whether that's off of the coast of South Africa or Australia. I got to go to Melbourne within the last year or two, and I looked it up, like how close am I going to be to a cage diving place, and how much would it be, and but it was going to be like extra flights, and it just wasn't going to work. But if we're talking bucket list, I would love to do that. In a cage, I'm not free diving. I'm not totally insane. But yeah, there's some places that I would like to go, and places I would like to take others and experience that with them. I think being the social butterfly that I am, when I am on some of these work trips, I often think, oh, my wife would love this. Oh, our mom would love this place. Or if she could see this thing, or you, like, oh, Dylan would love this. So I'm often thinking of like the people I would want to be with at that location or at that restaurant or seeing that thing. So, coming up, I get to tick something off my list that wasn't necessarily on it, but I'm going to get to go to my first IndyCar race.
Cool.
So it's a work trip, and it's going to be at the Texas Motor Speedway, and we get to sit in a suite and experience an IndyCar race. So I've never gotten to do anything like that before. Also with work travel, I got to go to my first. Well, it wasn't my first NBA game, but I got to sit in a box at a Pelicans game in New Orleans. That was fun. Anthony Davis was their star player. Is he a free agent now?
Yeah, he's going to go somewhere.
But
I don't know what the latest news is on that. But
the controversy or the controversy that was going on when I was there was the team is not great, and they weren't playing him so that they would maintain their first round draft pick because he's good and they're not. So if they do well, they win more games possibly. And so they were trying to maintain, but then the NBA was like, you can't like throw games to maintain your first pick and blah, blah, blah. So the arena wasn't very full,
Right.
but it was still cool to experience that. So yeah, I don't, this is going to sound really sappy after we've just gone around the circle and done bucket list stuff. But as a person who often thinks that the grass is greener, one personal development thing that I did was let me list the things I've already gotten to do that are pretty cool. Rather than keep focusing on all the things I want to do, and some of which I'll probably never do, what are the things I've already gotten to do that I've been very fortunate to do? So there have been times when I've gone like on a mission trip or something. Let's say it was 7 to 10 days, and 1 or 2 days of that you got, quote, to yourself. So did a mission trip in Lyon, France, and that's in the southern France. But as a part of that, on the very last day or two, we took a bullet train and I got to go up to Paris. And as an artist, I got to see the Louvre and some of that stuff. So I got to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower at sunset when they turn on all the, just like things that like I never thought I'd get. And I'm very emotional and sensitive and sappy and whatever. So I get to the top of the Eiffel Tower and I just start crying. I'm like, I didn't know I'd ever get to see this or experience this. And so, yeah, I'm often thinking about trying to force myself to think about things like that. But I've got a selfish side, and I've got lots of other stuff I would like to do. So I'm a big tropics guy, so I want to be on beaches and in hammocks and have a cool drink in my hand and my bride by my side, and want to go back to Hawaii. Like you said, we've got heritage in Ireland, so I want to go there. Speaking of castles, Ashford Castle is a castle in Ireland that the Guinness family owns, and it's like an 80+ room hotel that you can stay in.
Nice.
And depending on what time of year, you can do like quail hunting in the snow, and they have a guided hunt, and you come back and they fix you this feast by the fire, and then you stay in the rooms of a castle. And I mean, it's just, I believe it's in Northern Ireland. But I guess that's why those social media influencers say things like, hey, send me this free trip, and then I'll talk all about your thing on the interwebs.
That's a good point.
So if there's anybody that wants to send me on a cage dive with sharks or to Ashford Castle, we will talk all about you for a whole episode.
I'm much cheaper. If Jim Delaney from the Big Ten wants to send me some tickets, I'm good.
I'm good.
Here's looking at you, Jimmy.
But I'm all about experiences. Like I just want to not necessarily play. I guess it is kind of places, but I have a lot of joy seeing one of my favorite comedians live, and that doesn't cost a ton of money.
Right.
One of my new favorites is Nate Bargatze, right? And he's coming to Columbus. Like, I'd love to go see Nate Bargatze at the theater and just have a good night with a friend or with my wife. And that's an awesome experience for me that I'm like, tick.
Yeah, I know my wife and I got to see totally last minute. Sebastian Maniscalco was in town. I was so bummed you didn't get to go.
I know.
Something happened. All good. But literally somebody that my wife knew posted the day before on social media, hey, got 2 tickets. And I'm being like, the tickets probably should have been, close to $100. We paid $50 for 2 tickets. And my very kind and gracious mother and father-in-law offered to watch our daughter, with less than 24 hours notice, knowing it was going to be a late night, and we were able to go. And it was just so much fun. And actually, it was not long after he released a new special of the same title, and I had watched it. I had no idea I was going to go to the show. I would normally watch stand-up and then go see the same show, but it was like 98% different than the stand-up show of the same title.
It was
That's cool.
I mean, it was crazy.
I gather that's rare.
Like had to be less than a couple jokes that were like out of the special, but otherwise it was all different material. It was crazy. So shout out to Sebastian. Such a great show.
Was that the Stay Hungry?
Yeah. Was that the name of the special? I couldn't.
The book is Stay Hungry.
I have
right?
the book. Yeah. My to the fans, my brother Lovely got me a signed copy of Stay Hungry, and then the special released. It was streaming, and it was the show of the same title. And so I had read part of the book. I had watched the whole special at that point, and then went live, and it was, like I said, almost entirely a different set than the streaming, which is incredible.
Awesome.
Like I laughed a lot, like at the stand up and or the streaming special, excuse me. And I've never laughed so hard in my life. I actually got lightheaded 2 or 3 times throughout the show because I had been laughing so hard. So it was just a
He's great.
fantastic night. And so that'll go down with my wife as like one of our favorite things we've done together since we've known each other. It was just a blast.
That brings me to a fun question. How are you guys, if you were to see a celebrity in public, are you the type that would want to go over, or are you like, they're just a human being, whatever? Or would you kind of freak out a little bit, or are you somewhere in between?
I'd say,
I mean,
I'm
for
probably,
sure.
I think it depends on the
For
celebrity.
sure. That's what I was getting ready to say.
So, because for most celebrities, I would just be like, hey, that's kind of cool that I saw that person.
Yeah.
And I'd leave them alone. Mm-hmm. There are others, because I mean, there's, for example, there's bands that I'm a fan of that, I mean, that you've never heard on the radio, or if you have, it's been a long time.
Right.
Right. And so, but there's still bands that I'm very much a fan of. Mm-hmm. And if I were to see one of them, I would walk up and introduce myself, but more in like a conversatorial kind of way, if that's even a word.
Let's go with it.
Conversatorial.
So what you're saying is like, you don't want to be one of those people.
I'm not. So let me put it this way. I'm probably not going to take a selfie with them. I'm probably not going to ask them to sign anything for me. I just want to shake their hand and tell them that I appreciate their stuff.
Which they would be like, wow, that dude was classy. He didn't do the thing everybody else is doing. Like, I'm not even going to look you in the eye. I just want my selfie with you so that I can show all my friends that I got my picture with you. You would be more relational.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I'm not a big social media poster anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably fall in that group. Like, I'm mostly not going to bother them. And certainly if I thought I wanted to go say hello, I think I would be the more calm, collected. Hey, just a quick, love your work. Thanks for what you do. I've enjoyed insert whatever they do here. But I think there is context. So who are they and what situation are we in? If they were surrounded by a bunch of people, I certainly wouldn't approach them.
Right.
I don't want to add to that sort of level of chaos, but I think we kind of know based on the context of their work or what we've heard about them. If, in my head, I think somebody like if Tom Hanks happened to be, walking through the airport when I'm in the airport, he comes across to me as a guy who might be more polite and friendly if a fan were to approach him. I love Tom Hanks stuff. So I just, I think that would be somebody that would feel more approachable than, I don't want to knock anybody, but I think we know the types of celebrities that, just go,
Yeah. Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, I think
Try to give him a hug.
I think you would need to genuinely approach Jerry, very calm and collected, with something very.
I'm walking toward you. Shh, calm down.
I think you need to. If you can't approach him with something that you're sure he's never heard before, I think he's going to be annoyed.
And you won't come up with something.
And I'm sure you won't come up with something he hasn't heard. And I love Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee and Seinfeld and some of the stuff he's done. I just have a feeling he's far more likely, as an example, to be potentially annoyed by somebody approaching him than what I would suspect some other people would be. But that's fine. Those folks have been bothered enough. Like, it's not that I can't empathize. I don't go through it myself, but I can certainly see why they'd be tired of that.
So, and we say all that, and I wanted to also say this. There's probably one exception, that if I ever saw Nick Offerman, I would probably pee myself while trying to hug him.
He seems super down to earth.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd have any issue with most
with
people.
me peeing myself while hugging him.
Certainly,
he'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think he'd be fine. Just like don't get it on me, okay?
Yeah.
Come on, champ. You'd get one of those.
I feel the same way about Ludacris.
Longtime friend of the show. Ludacris.
Yes. So we've got your dad. We've got the Syrian family and Ludacris. That's our core.
Look, I can't believe that
core audience.
They've streamed our show hundreds of times between the six of them.
Can you believe
it's
it?
Incredible. So, do you think there are other celebrities who seems the most approachable? I mean, I throw out Tom Hanks because that was a name that came to mind. Like, I think Nick Offerman is absolutely somebody I wouldn't have thought of, but I absolutely think Nick Offerman would be somebody like that. Like, who do you think's the most down to earth?
I think there are people that seem very down to earth.
Sure. Who genuinely seems like, I think at least some of us are decent reads on people, if not collectively as a group. You get a sense of somebody.
I'm guessing the celebrities are kind of a tricky bunch to read, though. I think there's a lot more of them that seem like they're approachable than are.
I mean, some of them are literally paid to convince you of what emotion they're feeling. So, I mean, I would generally agree with you, but there's still like interviews. I mean, you still watch all these like interviews that they do and things like that where, you can kind of tell when some of them get annoyed and they get short and other people are willing to go on and seem more gracious.
Corey?
I think John Krasinski. I don't know why his name came to mind, but he seems like he'd be very genuine and down to earth. Jimmy Fallon. I really like Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon likes everything.
Yeah, he does. But
he's a matcher kind of guy.
Yeah, but
he matches your tone, matches your likes.
And in that way, because he feels, when you watch his show, when you watch The Tonight Show, you feel like he's as excited to be with that guest as you would be in his chair.
Sure.
Yeah.
and that makes it feel like he's interviewing his guest for you.
Yeah.
He's hanging out with them for you.
I think John Krasinski's a really good one.
Steve Carell seems like he's.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump to the next Office person.
I know. I'm sorry, but
I think Steve Carell puts off that vibe to me too. That he's just very. He seems like the type that's very gracious to have done something like The Office, where some people might do a show like that and feel like, I don't want to be typecast. I get associated with the show. I'm tired of it. He doesn't seem like the one at all who feels that way about his time with The Office. He might secretly loathe having done that show, but I don't get that sense at all from him.
Stephen Merchant, you know Stephen Merchant?
Yeah.
I just listened to. He was on. Oh crap! Which podcast was he just on? It was a really good episode. Oh, Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. They had him on, and he just. Maybe I'm just really interested in the way his mind works and how he writes those shows and his relationship with Ricky Gervais. And he was very humble and kind and kind of British quirky. And he seemed like that'd be a fun guy to hang out with.
Yeah, I think having listened to I never really listened a ton to Ricky Gervais' radio show with Stephen Merchant and Carl Pilkington. But I absolutely love An Idiot Abroad.
An Idiot Abroad.
The fact that you mentioned Stephen Merchant just instantly makes me jump to, if you haven't streamed the sort of comedic docuseries An Idiot Abroad, 100% check it out.
Or Derek, or Life's Too Short, or in any of those.
Yeah, some of them are not necessarily kid friendly, so watch a little bit before, but absolutely watch An Idiot Abroad. It's
funny.
Hilarious. I think.
Have you seen it, Kendall?
No.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Prepare to live.
yeah. Yeah, I can't even recap.
My bucket list is getting longer.
Yeah, I can't even try to recap the show other than to try to say Carl Pilkington is the producer for Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant's radio show. I don't know the name of the show. But he has, Ricky describes him as this sort of Homer Simpson-esque character.
Okay.
And part of the intro to the show is nothing is funnier than Carl being backed into a corner and poked with a sharp stick. I am that sharp stick. And so anything that you might want to do in world travels, they do, but in a way that's absolutely meant to irritate Carl Pilkington.
But you got to explain Carl more. So he's kind of simple in some ways.
Homer Simpson-esque is the best way to try to describe.
You're saying simple regarding IQ level.
It's called An Idiot Abroad.
Right.
He's simple. He's rather easily irritated. He has an interesting take on the world that most people wouldn't.
He's a little prejudiced in some ways.
He's a little prejudiced in some ways. And what's interesting.
So you said idiot abroad?
An idiot abroad.
An idiot abroad. Abroad is one word or two.
That's good.
We're from Ohio, folks.
I started to answer. I'm like, oh, he's pulling my leg.
So it's interesting. The more I've watched the show, and I've watched it a bunch of times, I don't know if it's just like mine's because I'm the village idiot and I start to agree with him over time. But in a weird way, I find that his views on the world itself are often pretty skewed.
Sure.
But his views on people are surprisingly on point. And so it's interesting because initially,
in a touching way, or in that he reads people pretty well. Like,
I don't think even he knows he's reading people well, but he has this ability to read people far better than places and things. And he sees through in his simplicity, he sees through some of the kind of BS that swirls around people. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because the more I watch the show, the more I kind of see where he's coming from in regards to how he views people. So it's really interesting because I don't think he realizes how on point he can be, or I'm absolutely the like-minded idiot, and I'm just like, yeah, this guy's great.
He's pulling you in.
He absolutely has, but it's a great show. You should check it out. There's a couple seasons of it. In fact, I'm not sure where it's streaming, but
So you're piloting something that you said we should eventually start as a segment, which is convince me I should watch.
yeah. Why should I watch?
Or why should I watch?
Yeah, why should I watch was absolutely not. I did not intend to plug that here, but I think it's a fun segment that we might roll out here and there. That is exactly what just happened. So if we're taking the non-blockbustery things, so this isn't about Star Wars and Marvel and DC and things like that.
Slightly more obscure.
Game of Thrones. If we're taking some slightly more obscure documentaries and TV shows, and Chernobyl is on HBO before it's gained any real significant popularity. Like it's not Game of Thrones or Sopranos, something like that. So finding these slightly more obscure things and sort of pitching everyone on the idea of why they should watch it.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I think it's maybe something that'll be recurring to a degree, but if you're asking why should I watch An Idiot Abroad, you should. It's hilarious and in some ways insightful. In other ways, you're just going to laugh because of his takes on the world.
It's fun.
And so check out An Idiot Abroad. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. If not, it's worth buying. If you enjoy any kind of anything remotely comedic,
And it's travel. I mean, you get to see all these parts of the world. Yeah.
So you're getting to see different parts of the world, and it's interesting. It's just
Cuisine, cultures.
It's from a quirky perspective. And so, yeah, it's great.
Well, since you guys never asked me, I like to think.
Hold on. Wait. Hey, Corey.
Yeah.
You know what? This was your topic.
Uh-huh.
How would you respond if you were to meet us?
Jeez, I didn't
How
even.
would you respond?
Sorry.
Gosh,
Man, we forgot about the guy with feelings, which is the guy you don't want to forget about.
I'm gonna have to send a text later to follow
he will
up.
somehow turn this around and apologize to us for it.
I'm looking forward to it. I expect an apology before the day breaks.
Kendall, we hadn't really hung out a ton before we started this little podcast, and it's frightening how well you know me. I'd like to think I'd be calm, cool, and collected around celebrities and not be that guy. But in some ways, and again, sure, it depends on the context and the person, I would probably freak out a little bit. More interestingly, my wife is the exact opposite. She could not care less about a celebrity encounter. In fact, she was very high up in a local restaurant chain to Columbus, Ohio, which is no longer around, called Damon's Grill. And we have a very big event every year called the Arnold Schwarzenegger Fitness Expo. Is that the official term?
It's
the Arnold Classic.
Arnold Classic. Yeah.
It is a bodybuilding, martial arts.
If you're into that, you
fitness.
already know about it.
You already know what it is.
It's literally an international thing.
It happens every year. All these interesting people, converge on Columbus, Ohio, and they have this big fitness expo. Damon's was catering it. So Sherry's manager said, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone have a green room, backstage VIP room to themselves where they can get away from the crowds, and we're catering it. We need somebody to go, take the food, serve the food, clean up, and come home. Would you like to go? And she's like, nah, you can send somebody else. She told me that, and I'm like, we grew up on like,
I'm somebody else.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I'll work for Damon's. But we grew up on those movies, the 80s and 90s action flicks.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad, and Grandpa Hubble, and just showing us those movies. Like, oh my gosh. I was like, wait, what? On a much, much, much smaller scale, I saw Christopher Titus, the comedian, in an airport in Atlanta, and was like, oh my gosh, it's Christopher Titus. He was getting a smoothie with him and his girlfriend or significant other, whatever. And I was like, hey, I'm really sorry to bother you, but like, you're Christopher Titus, right? And he's like, yeah. And I go, can I have your autograph? And so he signs whatever I had, my ticket or whatever. And then after he signed his name, he wrote, you need help. And I'm like,
Totally in line with who he is as a comedian. That's great.
That's kind of snarky, anyway.
I totally forgot the show Titus existed.
Yeah,
I know.
on Fox,
Anybody
remember?
under 30 is doing a Google search. Right?
Yeah. So we would look that up on TV Guide to see what was going to be on that week. what the subject matter was.
But no, I think our country does enough celebrity worship. It's certainly not that. I think they're interesting, and it'd be cool to just say, "Hey, I got to meet them and shake their hand."
I think part of if you actually had a moment to say anything more than hello, thank you, it's they've just had access to some things that somebody from the middle wouldn't. They have access to places and people and situations that are abnormal as part of the human experience. And so I think if nothing else, you could ask questions like, what are some of the most unique situations you've been in? I'd love to hear about it.
And the interesting dynamic that they all talk about is like, because they're coming into people's homes through entertainment, we, the viewers, feel like we know them.
Yeah.
That's just a character. But even if they are portraying themselves, even on talk shows or things like that, we feel like we know them. So we're like, hey. To the counterpoint, though, there are people who have said they meet people in airports and stuff that are angry with them about their on-screen characters choices, and it's like, hey, remember that? That's just a movie.
So half the cast of Game of Thrones and Walking Dead are just getting like, how could you?
Well, not just because apparently that season was not very good, but
yeah,
because if you play a despicable character, people tend to treat you as such.
Yeah,
And
Joffrey, Ramsay Bolton, a few names come to mind. Anyways,
You know what? Jim's much better. I'm glad that Pam left you.
But then there are some who, in a serious way, like their comedy or whatever, really made you happy or lifted you, or you were like, not heroes when you were little kids, but you just want that opportunity to be like, hey, really appreciate your work. Thanks a lot. And I think we all have a couple of those that'd be like,
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think in that vein, I wouldn't say somebody like Robin Williams was somebody who like particularly stuck out to me growing up, but that's somebody who seemed like they needed that from fans probably more than anybody else. And, he ended up taking his own life tragically. But that's somebody who seemed like they probably really loved every time that they got some of that sort of fan feedback. And I mean, obviously for me, like I think of the genie, and like Mrs. Doubtfire or some of those roles from somebody like him.
We're kids of the 90s.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, I don't know. That's somebody that probably would have appreciated that more than anybody else. So it's just hard to know like who enjoys that and who doesn't. How would we know? So
if you're a celebrity listening to this podcast, if you could send us a comment,
yeah, just maybe tweet us.
click on one of those links in the social medias there. Send us a voice message. Let us know.
Yeah, subscribe, tag us, give us a shout out on whether you're approachable and like fans. Giving you nice comments.
Play your cards right. We'll have you on the show.
Yeah. No promises, right? Like, we got to schedule guests, but we'll see.
We'd feel so affirmed.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I got nothing else. No other celebrities come to mind.
All right.
I feel good.
It's been real.
It has been real.
Until next time, follow us on our social media accounts at From the Mid Pod. Reach out to us, leave us a voicemail, ask us a fun question that we can weigh in on. Use the hashtag Thoughts From the Middle, or email us directly at fromthemiddle@protonmail.com. Until next time, I am Corey Hubble.
Dylan Hubble.
Gandole Lola.
Peace.
Thank you for listening, Ludacris.